Hello and welcome to the Real Life Podcast, episode number 37. This is part 2 of a discussion following on from last week with Dr. Daniel Kenealy, where we sat down to do a full-bodied dissection of the Oscars and the year as a whole in film. It took us a full 1 hour and 30 minutes just to get through the awards before reaching the Best Picture, which is where this podcast finds us. So sit back and enjoy as we talk through the Best Picture nominees and a list of our 10 favourites from the year gone by, as well as a brief look at what's coming in the next few months. Okay then, Best Picture.
Best Picture.
The nominees for the Oscars, you had Anora, you had The Brutalist, you had Complete Unknown, you had Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, Substance, and Wicked. Which, as you were saying before, apart from I'm Still Here and probably Nickel Boys, were also just like the expected kind of, they were the ones that were doing the rest of the rounds, and it's
there was a solid 8. There were 8 kind of nailed on for a while, and then it was those last 2 slots, and pretty good as the last 2 slots go. It could have been September 5, and I don't know what, I didn't really care for September 5. That's a movie I should have liked,
right? Based
on what it's about, and it just, did you see it?
Didn't get around to it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bump
rush
it up the list. No,
sure.
It's just a very tightly made film about about editing. In a news context around the Munich Olympics when the hostage crisis was done, but story's been told. It's been done in documentary form. Spielberg kind of did a variation of it with Munich. It's like, why are we doing this? And if you're going to do it, then expand it and really get into the story and the journalistic ethics stuff. It stayed very at the surface. I'm giving it too much time here, just speaking.
Sorry.
So, Nickel Boys and I'm Still Here. They were good, I think. Good 9th and 10th inclusions.
So did you have a list of a 5 or a 10?
I have a list, yeah. You have one too?
I do. I've managed to somehow order my 10 favourites of the year.
Oh, you've
which
ordered?
I didn't think I was going to be able to do, but I have.
Well, I can do 10.
Is it 10 long?
I can do 10, but I can just cut it at 5.
Let's do 10.
Let's do 10. Mine aren't in order though.
That's all right.
Yeah.
At 10, I did have The Brutalist because I think, even though there's bits of it that I don't get on with, and I think it could have been a lot shorter, and I think it did need to go over, I also think that there's some bits of it that are absolutely astonishing, like that section at the end where Guy Pearce is sort of congratulating him at the sort of the ceremony, and it's shot of them on the backdrop of the hills, and then it cuts in a second, and the entire family is there standing and watching them. I just absolutely love some of the stuff like that. So there was bits of it sprinkled in that I thought were great, but it wasn't my favourite overall, so it was at number 10.
Okay. I'm throwing in.
I was going to say vibe.
I'll throw in something from my bottom because I kind of know because I've got a list of 5 and then a list of 10, so I can at least do a distinction between them.
Yeah.
So I'll put Anora in but again we've discussed it, but that would be in my 10, but not in my top 5. So I don't think we need to say anything else necessarily about Anora, other than I've got a lot of people writing essays about it this year.
Oh, great.
How it is a neoliberal representation of sex work, and therefore not a good enough one, not a realistic one. It doesn't show the collective struggle. It's it just makes the enemy. The message of the story, the message of the movie is, this rich Russian comes along and gives her the opportunity maybe to escape this world, and then it doesn't work out, and it's like it's just Pretty Woman for the modern era.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how convincing I find that, but it's a legitimate take, I suppose. So Anora, but definitely in my top 10.
Yeah. Good. I think I had a real pain at 9 because love the script. I watched it and then spoke to my flatmate about it, who is from Poland, and was like, "That's made everything look wonderful." So that's big thumbs up for him. And I love the 2 subject performances, and then I love the sort of the group feel of it. I did find myself, it was sort of like Office style cringy every now and again, just being like, you sort of don't upset the apple cart, your social cues are wrong. But that was the point. And I love the way it ended because it felt like it could either be reading it as, what a shame he's ended up back at the airport with nothing to do, or great, he's back at the airport and he's got sort of the open road in front of him and he can do whatever.
There is, literally, not to hit the nail too much on the head, I found it's just an interpretation. There was a real pain on his face at the end of the film, and I guess the reason, I don't want to get too personal maybe, but I've felt that before. I've felt that I've been in that situation where you're sitting in a public space, you don't feel alone literally because there's people around you. And you're smiling, but you just desperately want something, a flicker of recognition, a flicker of something. And to capture all that in one look, without saying a word. This is why I keep coming back to why Kieran Culkin really impressed me with this performance. It's my turn.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so this is a movie that would get nowhere near the Oscars. Strange Darling.
Strange Darling.
It's a kind of cat and mouse serial killer kind of film. It's told in a completely non-linear way. It's got a sort of 90s indie cinema vibe, bit of a Tarantino kind of vibe. Looks great, edited great. It just moves. It's not that long, and it starts, grabs you by the wrist, and it just drags you through its story. Cool. It's very cool. There's nothing, I wouldn't say, like, important about it necessarily, but it's just a good time at the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That'll go on the watch list. Okay, I think at number 8 I've gone for Wallace and Gromit because it was such a great return to form. They could have very easily dropped the ball, I think, and done something sort of easy and whatever, but it made Christmas telly go well for the day. Whatever else nonsense happens on Christmas Day, there's always one bit of TV that's worth watching, and that was it. All the jokes worked perfectly for me. I think the None on a Pleasure Cruise is something I could easily get tattooed, like, and bringing back Feathers McGraw as well was the perfect way to get people back on board. After
you love Wallace and Gromit. I
absolutely
really love
Wallace and Gromit. Yeah, well, it's that kind of thing I've had since I was very small, and it's always been on. And you forget that actually, in terms of if you're going to put the entire filmic catalogue of Wallace and Gromit together, you could probably be done in about 3 hours, and and that'll be it. I just appreciate how much effort goes into making these things, and when it works, and it did. So
I would have a different man in my top 10. Again, between spoiler, The Substance isn't in my top 10, but if we put those two films together as, in some sense, trying to do similar things and hit on similar themes, this would be my preferred film. And again, the Sebastian Stan performance and Adam Pearson and Renata Reinsve is in it as well, who amazed me a few years back in Worst Person in the World.
Worst Person in the World.
Yeah, and so I just thought the ensemble in this was really good. It was an incredibly creative story, but it didn't have that visual excess of The Substance. And I am generally, I lean slightly more on the subtler side, typically with films that tend to make my top 10 list. So Different Man is my Sebastian Stan entry. Because another spoiler, The Apprentice isn't in my top 10 films. Okay. Loved the performances in it.
Well, I mean, I've got Honora at 7, which obviously we've spoken about, and it's just, I think that winning will mask what was probably a slightly subpar selection of films in terms of other years. I was talking about my friend with this, like, the crop of films that could have won in 2017, which I think is the year Moonlight won, were like unbelievable. And then I think 2 years, and then when Green Book wins, like, there's not actually a standout. I mean, you could probably put The Favourite as the one which would be most likely to, as sort of the best film there. But there weren't loads. I think it was Black Klansman, it was Black Panther, it was If Star Is Born,
Roma. Which is admirable, but I don't think it's not a rewatch. Come on, I'd never watch that movie again, I don't think, the rest of my life. And of course, that year, not only did Green Book win its 3 Oscars, but the biggest Oscar winner that year with 4 trophies, year best forgotten, was Bohemian Rhapsody.
One for editing, which was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it's in my bottom 5 of my top 10 as well. Oh, I'm trying to think which one I'll say next before I get into the top 5. Sing Sing. I mean, again, we touched on it, but Sing Sing, to me, it's just I found it very moving. I think there are so many ways in which you describe the story of this film. It's inmates, convicted felons in a prison, who find a way to, better themselves through the power of art and performance. And you just describe it like that, and you think this is going to be awful. This is going to be insufferable. It's going to be full of cliches. And again, it's about, I suppose it's the restraint that they manage to bring to it, and the fact that a lot of the people in the movie are telling their own stories. They're playing themselves, which I found very effective. And the only thing I'd say about that is the Coleman Domingo kind of, he weirdly jarred with the rest because he's so obviously the professional actor in it. And sometimes I just wondered if they shouldn't have cast somebody much less famous, because he kind of sucked the oxygen in a little bit. He's got this ring of subtlety around him, and even though he was restrained compared to what he sometimes does, it was a bit distracting. But I really enjoyed the film. I cried at the end of it, which is not hard to get me to cry. But so.
I think it's. I was trying to, in my head, have this debate about which was a more deserved Oscar nomination for Colman Domingo between this and last year with Rustin. Because that was last year.
Rustin was last year. Yeah, he's had two on the run for movies that kind of got skipped and missed. I mean, I just thought Rustin was. It was quite dull.
Yeah.
Like it, given what it was about, which is a super interesting story about different. It was basically supposed to be a story about intersectional issues in the civil rights movement, and it didn't engage with any of that. It didn't really engage with any of the political debates and the challenges. It just sort of... I watched it once. I've not rewatched it again, so my memory's a bit hazy on it. But all of the kind of antagonisms that I would have expected the movie would have been about within that movement were just completely backgrounded. And then they were at the rally. They were at the big march, and I was like, how did this happen? The movie left me with no sense of how this happened, of how the different factions within the movement actually resolved their differences to work together. It just skated over all of that. It was a shame.
I had The Apprentice at number 6
Okay.
because actually, when I think about all the elements of it, I think it all comes together quite nicely. I like the script a lot. It's got 3 great central performances because I think Maria Bakalova is also really noteworthy in that. I think she does a really great job. And also I liked this. It's a slightly obvious metaphor, but the camera does this thing at the start where it's very wobbly. It's very kind of like someone's secretly filming a documentary, kind of zooming in from a crowd kind of thing. And then by the end of it, it's almost like it's sandbagged to the floor. And it's like as Trump becomes the Trump we know, as he starts to assure himself, things start to settle down and he's more in control. And I just like that. Like, it's a fairly obvious metaphor, but like I just kind of enjoyed the way it was put together. I like the little sort of soft lighting tinge it had the whole way through. Just really enjoyed it.
And it got your screenplay prize too.
It did.
So it kind of has to be in the top 10. It'd be
there,
strange if it wasn't. Okay, so I'm gonna. This is one of these. If you ask me on a different day, this might be like 10th, 11th. I could substitute things out. Kneecap.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Stumbled on it. I mean, I was kind of vaguely aware because I think I'd seen an article in The Guardian about the group and then the movie, and it's not my kind of music. You probably won't be surprised to hear. And I was just sitting at home one night. I had nothing. I didn't know what I was. Home alone, and I was like, just go on, I'll watch it. And I was so, with no expectations at all, and I was so impressed by it on almost every level. I was impressed by it technically. I was impressed by how fast it was and how it was edited and how the music was used. I was impressed by how much politics it got in without in any way, shape or form being like didactic. I didn't feel like I was getting a lecture. I didn't feel like I was being taken out of the story so they can just tell me this little thing about the Troubles or this. And the scene where you've seen it, right? The scene where they basically end up. It's like basically pretend to be a British soldier because it's like it's a bit of a kink for me in this situation. I was like, that's just genius. I mean, it's just absolutely fantastic. No, I loved it. I was quite surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I was disappointed it didn't get an international film nomination at the Oscars. I thought it might have snuck in, but
I really liked Kneecap. But I saw it after I did my awards things. It probably would have been competing a lot more.
Oh, so you don't go back and edit? Okay, you don't.
Well, I'd already done the podcast, so I didn't want to be go back on myself. But I probably would have included it in a few more places because I think the thing I liked about it most was the pacing. I loved how sort of snappy and fast it was, and yet it didn't feel like it didn't feel like it compromised itself by doing that, which I thought was great. I've got Dune Part 2 at number 5.
So we're into the top 5, yeah.
It's just big. It's just blockbuster filmmaking done right. You know what I mean? Like some of the bits that stand out, like the Harvester attack obviously is great, and then you've got the scenes in the arena when it turns to black and white. And I just remember looking at it, thinking like, I don't think I've seen anything look like that in such a long time. And what I love about Dune is how easily everything could be completely ridiculous. The whole film at the start of the first one premises on this magical space dust that exists within the sand that they have to try and filter through.
When you say it out loud,
don't spend too long there because then some giant worms are going to come and eat you. But don't worry, Paul, our saviour, is here to come. And it's like, my dad's called Paul, you know what I mean? Like, I know Pauls, they're just everywhere. It's not like it's this big epic name or anything. And it's so, and the Bene Gesserits having massive hats and all this sort of stuff, and yet not for 1 second did I think this is completely ridiculous. I was just taken by it the whole time, and I believed in everything. And what I like about it is it's sci-fi that's taking itself seriously as it ought to do, which is the only way to do sci-fi. That's why one of my favourite films is Steven Soderbergh's Solaris. I prefer it over the Tarkovsky version because I think it started to take itself more seriously. And speak more to wider bits and pieces. But yeah, everything about Dune 2 is great.
I agree, and it's not. I mean, sci-fi or fantasy. I know they're different things, but they're not really my kind of. It's not somewhere that I spend a lot of time in. But I love these films, and I think it's exactly what you say. It's elevated to a way where it's like it's incidentally a science fiction film, but actually what it's about in terms of power and resources and it's just a great epic political tale. It's a story about political power, and it could be transposed to a middle-age setting in the past. It could be transposed to a more present-day set. Yeah, to me it's like an incidentally science fiction film, which to me are always the best science fiction films.
Yeah.
It's my number 4, so maybe we can just I'll come back to number 5, but after you do your number 4. But yeah, I think it's I don't know what's going to happen with Messiah, and I've heard that it's harder to adapt. It's not as it's a bit more. Yeah. It's less narrative and plot driven, and a bit more of a thinky book.
It's more of a political one because it's about Paul completely changing because he's at the height of his power. Right. He sort of becomes what that what the prophecy says he will become in terms of like a changed messianic figure. Okay. And then the fallout of that. So it is a little bit different, yeah.
Because I guess that the expectation, or maybe not, is that Dune Messiah will do a Return of the King. Sorry, just back briefly to the Oscars. Yeah. It's like they're waiting, and then the third Lord of the Rings, of course, that just everything that night. It went 11 for 11, having won a few in the first 2 parts, and so maybe that's what Denis Villeneuve gets Oscar for. He'll get it for Dune Messiah.
I thought that was gonna. I kind of thought it might happen this year, because I thought with the delay of the release to 2024, I thought, oh well, that's great because it's missed out on that incredibly stacked Oscars when it might have got lost in the mire anyway. So it was going to stand out at this one, and then they just kind of forgot about it. I've got Monkey Man at number 4, which but I have Indian family. And it weirdly touched this sort of thing, because it's obviously all set in India, but it really sort of touched this, like, it felt like it was sort of celebrating Indian culture in a way that, there's loads of Indian action movies, but I haven't seen many of them, and this was a good sort of in for that, to take Dev Patel, who we all know, and make him do this whole thing. It was great, and the music's great, it's edited so sharply, the camera work is like on fire, the character design is great, and I think it was like 2.5 hours, but I wasn't feeling like, I was going to give up at any stage. I was on board the whole time, so I could watch that again and again.
That's the other one that I'm going to put on my list along with Hundreds of Beavers. Yeah. You can also recommend films to me that don't have animals in the
I was going to say,
happy to take that
zoological year that I've gone for, yeah.
So yeah, my number 4 was Dune Part 2, so I'm just stepping back to my 5, Flo. Talking about animals, there you go. I did you see this? Yeah, you did. We talked about it earlier. No, I first of all, I love cats. I don't have one because my partner's got allergies, but my best friend has a cat that looks like the cat in Flo. Not that that's why I like the film. I just thought, it was so, again, it's so different. I haven't really seen anything like it before. I kind of expected that I might get a little bit bored in it because I knew that there was no dialogue, and I don't think I'm as big a fan of animated cinema as you, based on some of the things you've been saying in the last while we've been talking. And it just kind of gripped me, and in a sense, it's just such a pure demonstration of what cinema can be, because so much of what we associate with film isn't there. There is no dialogue. They don't give these characters. I was waiting for them to start giving the animals like human-like properties. I was like, they're going to get there eventually, and they really don't. And I kept thinking, how can they sustain this? Surely they can't. And they did. And again, in terms of its message, it was a sort of obviously a somewhat environmental themed, we're all in the same boat, we need to realize how to work together and do things differently message, but it didn't whack you over the head with it. It was quite restrained. And again, we discussed earlier just the way in which this film was made, how long it took, how small the budget was, that it's done on open source software, just incredible. Makes me realize how incompetent and unskilled I am. It does, can't do any of these things.
There is this thing, like it keeps happening, I see, and then this is a problem we're watching football and people going, and here comes the 17-year-old. I'm thinking, oh, for God's sake, like, what have I been doing with my entire life? I think that some of the best films of recent years have been animated. And I think I don't see, you don't see them crop up in any kind of best picture lists in terms of Oscars, which is a real shame sometimes, because I could quite easily have given my best film of the year to Into the Spider-Verse when that came out. I just think that changes the face of animation for me, and I think it's so much to it, which is absolutely brilliant. And again, part of the good thing about that is that they've not taken the big names and put them into those kind of voice roles for that. There's a lot of sort of like semi-known but still up and coming type things, so that now she make more is Miles Morales in a lot of people's head, and I really like when they do stuff like that. And you know, Mahershala Ali is an altered version of himself. He's not just doing Mahershala Ali in a role of Uncle Aaron and stuff like that. So I haven't actually included any animated film. Oh yeah, Wallace and Gromit.
Wallace and Gromit.
I have La Chimera at number 3.
At number 3,
just because it was something different, and
this is the wanky choice.
It kind of is the pretentious wanky.
You've got to have one in there.
It's the smart choice, because the
I've got one too.
Okay, well, okay. I mean, there's always one there, but this one was like I saw it on a whim on like a Wednesday afternoon or something at home. As in at my cinema at home, and it was delightful. I didn't know what I was getting, and then it just kept getting sort of sillier but more profound. By the end of it, it was that kind of, it's, you know, like sort of like an Englishman abroad type thing. It's how that had that sensibility to it, and then by the end of it, it was this kind of really deeply entwined, unusual but sort of like intense bit of work. And I particularly love that ending. I mean, obviously, I'd kind of twigged before that had happened what was going on, but I was like, I really appreciated the way it was structured and put together. So.
It did make my 10, so clearly I didn't like it as much as you, but I did think it was a good film. It tried my patience a little bit. Okay. In at times it felt a bit, let me get as many techniques and things into this film as I can to show you that I can do them, which is maybe a little bit unfair, but I did enjoy it, and I think principally the reason why I enjoyed it is Josh O'Connor. I think he's probably the best of that sort of age, generation, wherever. I just find him consistently impressive, and that he can do that in the same year as he can play Patrick Zweig in Challengers, which, like I say, is not a movie I particularly liked, but I thought he was just tremendous in it. And I mean, I think he should already have an Oscar. He should have gotten his Oscar for God's Own Country back in 2019, I think.
Really good.
So La Chimera is your 3. So we'll trade off the wank choices. So my number 3 is Horizon: An American Saga Part 1. Now that's a joke. It's not the Kevin Costner. Do you know what? I actually really enjoyed it.
Right.
It's a 3-hour Western, and it's only part 1 of 4 if he can find the money to make them. And I actually quite enjoyed it.
Did they release Chapter 2 in the same year?
Say that again?
Did they release Chapter 2 in the same year?
No, Chapter 2 was pushed back, and it's now supposed to get a release later on this year.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Apparently it's better than Part 1.
Right, because that's also 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah,
no wonder he stopped doing Yellowstone. He was spending 500 years making this.
Well, it just seems as if what he's going to end up doing here, if all 4 of them are 3 hours long, it's a 12-hour limited series. Why he just didn't do it as prestige TV? But Kevin Costner being Kevin Costner, if you want his answer to that question, you can find it multiple times in multiple interviews. So I am joking, it's not my number 3, although I did enjoy it. There's some great westerns. I like westerns. There's some great western set pieces in it. My actual number 3 is... So technically this movie was made in 2023, but it did not have any distribution other than at festivals until 24. Right. So I think I'm okay to count it as Evil Does Not Exist.
Ooh,
which is Hamaguchi's after this not follow up, but the film he made after Drive My Car. And I have watched this. I saw it in the cinema, and I've watched it a couple of times since. It's on BFI Player, if people have that, and it's just so mysterious and confounding. And it's not a horror film, but it's got a lot of sort of undertones of horror, and it's got this really eerie, slow build in tension. So the premise of the film is it's a glamping, an organization that does, glamping comes to this, or they want to set up a glamping site in this small Japanese town that has a very balanced ecosystem in terms of its water and its fish and its forests. So the glamping company are like, this is perfect. We can sell holidays here for a ton of money and stuff. And they have to sort of win over and persuade the local community. And so that it starts in that way. And you're like, oh, this seems like a fairly conventional movie about corporate interest comes into small environment that's very connected to its nature. What's going going to happen, and then it doesn't go anywhere where you think it's going to go at all. It doesn't actually become about trying to resolve that tension. There's no big shouty scenes in local meetings and stuff, although they do show some of those meetings. It just meanders and wanders and dissolves into this really mysterious, confounding film with a beautiful score, tremendous sound. I mean, this is a movie that, if Nickel Boys was the movie this year that worked with the eye, this is the movie that works with the ears. And I just find it consistently fascinating to go back to. It's like a Malick, Terrence Malick type film. You know, if you're in the right mood, you can just go back again and again and again. And there's layers and layers and layers to it. And it has got an eeriness to it. Yeah, I really, really, really loved this film. That's my pretentious wanker one.
That's a good choice.
In at number 3.
It was originally made as just being a half an hour short.
Yep.
And then it's obviously been stretched out. I already took 3 million at the box office, but like, yeah, that sounds fascinating. I might watch that tonight. If you're going to watch Hundreds of Beavers tonight, I'll probably watch Evil Does Not Exist tonight.
It's a movie swap.
I really liked Drive My Car, and I thought it was like, it was one of those just sort of like, oh joy, this has been done properly, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'll look forward to that. That'll be good. My number 2 is Hundreds of Beavers.
Yes.
But only because it tried something wild and that we hadn't seen. And I need to go back and watch the other stuff that has come out of this, because there is a film, I think it's called The Curse of the Lake Monster or something, and it's very, very similar.
The Curse of the Lake Monster,
something like that, which actually might be a Scooby-Doo film. But
this sounds like a movie that Gene Hackman's character in Get Shorty would have made.
Let's see what it is.
It doesn't sound like a real movie.
It doesn't sound like a real movie, but I promise you it is. That's it, Lake Michigan Monster.
Okay, that's better.
Which is, it's the same kind of thing. It's a comedy horror. But it's done in this sort of comic book slapstick style, and I think Mike Cheslick was the editor on that, but I think he was only the director on Hundreds of Beavers. But it's this kind of absurdist thing, but in a really endearing way. It didn't feel like someone was playing a game of film nerd with me. It just kind of felt like it was having fun, and it wore it on its sleeve rather than trying to hide it. It just sort of said, well, this is what we've got to work with, so let's just do it like this, and then it was great. I think I've said all.
I'm looking forward to it. That's your 2.
It is.
Okay. I've just lost the screen I was looking at where I had my list. My 2. Well, again, I've said everything I need to say about it, but maybe this will surprise. Maybe you think this was going to be my number 1. Nickel Boys is my 2.
Okay.
And again, I like to think about my split of awards, and hence I gave it director, I gave it cinematography. There are 2 movies this year for me that I think on Letterboxd, because I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I think there's only 2 that I gave. Oh no, I gave 4.5 stars to Evil Does Not Exist, June Part 2, Nickel Boys, and one other film. So they have to be my top 4 in some configuration, because they've got my highest star ratings. But I do, I'm kind of indulging myself with my best film pick, because I feel like I've covered off Nickel Boys with the director and the cinematography pick. But I don't have anything to add on Nickel Boys. I just think everybody should take 2 hours and 20 minutes, and in the right frame of mind. You've got to be in a patient frame of mind for it, because it's not the easiest film, but it pays. It's rewarding. It's worth it. So I thought Hundreds of Beavers was going to be your number 1.
Well,
so what's going on?
I thought it was for a while, but I had to think.
It's Megalopolis, isn't it?
What it so is.
No. You don't think there's any possibility that gets reclaimed in the future, Megalopolis?
What is this kind of like? But you didn't understand it.
Well, I mean, Film Comment, which is talk about the wanky pretentious lists. Film Comment's top 20 of the year. Megalopolis got in, and you can already see the beginnings of this. Like, it's being misunderstood. There's something really profound here. Of the 2 big movies about architecture this year, people are missing, the brutalist, but no, they're missing the best one, Megalopolis. And I'm like, I went back because I did a Coppola rewatch. I really tried actively. I was like, I'm gonna make notes about what's good about this film, and I just couldn't. I couldn't find anything.
It made me reevaluate Coppola, which is a shame. But it made me think about like the thing about, as I've said this before, I've never loved The Godfather. I've always thought it was like really good. I always thought like performances are great, and like the patience it has, and all the kind of the bubbling tension underneath it is all great, and I love the interactions, and it's this great kind of mood setting thing. But I've never been massively interested in what's under the hood of The Godfather in terms of like loads of its subtext, because I think the genius of it and the beauty of it is in what we see and what we actually watch, right? Which is all great.
Well, profound statements about family and the immigrant experience. experience and the relationship between crime and commerce. It's kind of like the seminal movie about, American history. But yeah, sure, what's on the screen and, it bubbles along. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But then he made Jack.
It's not bad.
You can't, and the problem with Megalopolis and why it makes me reevaluate everything is because it's absolutely everything he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
It's not like Justice League where it's terrible, but it's not actually Zack Snyder's fault. It's everything, and people trying. You need to reevaluate it. No, you don't. He was on so much marijuana when he made this. He was not thinking properly in the slightest. And it is a movie about architecture, but the architecture in the film doesn't make any sense. No. The clock tower is the highest part of the city, right? Nothing towers above it, and yet they have a conversation on construction beams above it, which are hanging from clouds. I mean, what's going on? The entire there's nothing. I'm not going to go on another rant about it. There's nothing.
No. And just another book though. Just I know we're not supposed to be talking about Coppola. We're going to reveal our number ones. But The Path to Paradise is a book that was published just last year by Sam Wasson, and it's principally about the making of Apocalypse Now. But it goes backwards and forwards to sort of tell a fuller picture about Coppola, who I find, a fascinating director. But I don't think anyone's ever had a run like he did in the 70s. Yeah. Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now. Yeah.
I
mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And there's maybe one day we'll do another podcast on Coppola, but we won't. Let's do the number ones. And otherwise we'll go on a tangent. It's not Megalopolis. It is.
I had to think about every bit of it, and when I realised what every bit of it was, it was a film that the film that I could watch again and again and again and again from this year is Conclave.
Oh wow! Okay.
Purely from the opening shot of following on and it being right. Here's who we're following literally, and it's going to be him the entire time. All of it looks so great. The set design is fantastic. The script's great. It's Gossip Girl in papal clothing. They're the most diabolical vape hit in the entire of cinematic history. That's the thing, is when I was thinking about who are my supporting actor nominations, I was like, well, it could be Lucien Msamati, it could be Stanley Tucci, it could be John Lithgow, it could be I keep forgetting his name, but the Italian cardinal, racist one. It could have been so many of them. It's a brilliant cast. I love the fact that I love the way that it's framed. Apart from anything else, is talking scenes are the most difficult thing to make interesting.
Oh yeah,
and it does it with sort of such elegance and kind of ease. And then there's also the shot where they're all walking through that little square with the umbrellas up. And maybe this is me reading too much into it and being sort of pretentious and I spotted the metaphor. But the fountain that they're all walking past is a concave shape, right? And all the umbrellas are the opposite. They're all curved over the top, and it kind of made me none of them fit. None of them are the right person to be the Pope. And then you get Cardinal Benitez come along, who's just a complete outsider. And I get that people don't like the Triscas. It's a bit kind of well, obviously we saw that, but that is also that's the book. That's what Robert Harris wrote. So and that's what happens. And what I thought the good bit about the twist was that we got to a point where I think the audience almost accepts the fact that Cardinal Lawrence is going to be the Pope, and that he sort of got to a point where he has his own people name. He wants to be called John, and we start thinking, we'll get to the next voting stage and he will be revealed, and then it isn't him. And I really enjoyed that, and I thought all the stuff with the turtles, moving that back, and it's a small scene, but Isabella Rossellini talking about having to be, a woman observing all this and not getting any kind of, we have to keep our mouths closed, but we can see absolutely everything going on. I just thought every bit of it I really, really loved, and I could quite happily stick it on at any time, and I wouldn't have to be in a certain frame of mind. I just enjoy it all the time. And also as a politics nerd, it was hey, democracy, let's observe this.
I really enjoyed it. I've seen it a couple of times. Again, it's one I saw it in the cinema. I've watched it at home. I've watched it with other people, so I think I've seen it at least 3 times because I watched it with my mum, and she loved it. It's a very, I don't mean this in a bad way, it's a very crowd pleasing, solid, it's more than solid, drama. And it's I felt it's not in my 10, but it's wouldn't be far off. I felt like it was just missing. There was 1 or 2 short scenes somewhere missing. When it sort of came towards the end, the twist didn't bother me. it just the twist and the dynamic between Ralph Fiennes and I can't remember the name of the character.
Colonel Benitez.
The one who becomes Pope. Yeah. I've just spoiled the movie. There you go for everybody. It's been out for long enough. I needed a little bit more of that interaction, I think, to give me the payoff at the end. And because I'm maybe a more cynical bastard, I don't know, I kind of I wanted something at the end that was marginally more sinister, as if there's a next turn to this to come. Yeah. Actually, somebody does know about this, or I almost wanted that guy who kept coming to sort of whisper into Ralph Fiennes' ear to be like, this has happened and it's done, but there's something. So it just didn't quite satisfy me, the end of the film. It left me wanting just a little bit more in terms of a bit more intrigue or a bit more payoff between those two characters. But that is such a minor note. I loved the movie. I wasn't bored for a second. It's a great example of ensemble acting, of great tight writing. We already talked about the editing and the music. It's just a brilliantly crafted film, and I'm really looking forward to see what Edward Berger does next. Yep. It's a gambling film in Macau with Colin Farrell, so I'm in.
Great.
I'm in.
Yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah. So my number one is, I guess we've kind of both ended up in a position of sort of a slightly more accessible, crowd-pleasing films in a sense. Because mine, you know what I'm going to say, because I've been talking about it and I haven't named it yet, is A Real Pain. Mm-hmm. And I wrestled with having it at number one over Nickel Boys, because there's something so purely innovative and cinematic about Nickel Boys. And being mean-spirited, one could say, well, A Real Pain is, it's 90 minutes, it's a few characters, they go through some very basic settings, an airport, a plane, a train, a hotel. It could just be a play and you wouldn't have to change anything. So what's cinematic about that? But then I started thinking about, I know we don't talk about him so much these days, but I started thinking about, some of my favourite Woody Allen films. I started thinking about Paul Mazursky films from the 1970s, these great little small character dramas that they usually are only 90 to 100 minutes long. There's nothing obviously flashy and over the top about them. They're just very, very well made, very well crafted, really rounded characters. And this to me was that. And I've watched the film, at least 4 times, because I saw it in the cinema. I watched it at home once. I watched that with I don't watch movies with my mother all the time, but I watched that one with my mother. And I watched it with my partner a separate time. So I've seen it at least 4 times, which must tell me something.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see what Jesse Eisenberg now does, in terms of someone who writes, directs. Whether he'll continue to place himself at the center of his films as an actor, I don't know. But he now is, I said a minute ago, Josh O'Connor is one of the most interesting actors, I think, currently working. I think with this film, Jesse Eisenberg has established himself as one of the most interesting writer-directors. And yeah, I just loved the movie. And Will Sharp, I thought, was great as well.
Will Sharp's great,
yeah. I mean, he should have gotten the supporting actor nomination, because Culkin should have been in the lead actor category.
Yeah. And then again, it does open up the idea that I think the Oscars should have some more categories for, I think for sort of casting should be.
Yes, they're introducing that next year, I think. So if they'd had it this year, Sean Baker might have won 5, which would have broke the record. Yeah. He tied with Walt Disney with his 4.
Right.
4 Oscars on one night, 4 competitive Oscars on one night. But yeah, if it had been a casting award, I suspect it would have won.
And they're going to do a stunt category or not?
I don't think
that has been called for.
I don't think they've said they are, but they're looking to review categories, and I think that's one of the ones being actively considered.
Right.
I think the counter consideration is, if we start adding, do we have to remove?
Well, yeah, of course. Well, we could, a couple.
Because the other one that people talk about is you should add one for best cast, best ensemble cast. I mean, because people say, well, the Screen Actors Guild do that. But the Screen Actors Guild do that because they don't have a Best Picture award. So it's kind of their Best Picture prize. The problem with adding something like Best Cast is, does everyone in the cast get an Oscar, and then aren't you cheapening the value of an Oscar statuette? So I'm not sure if they'll move in that direction, but yeah, stunts is talked about, casting is happening, and it's a perennial question about what you do with the music categories, because even score doesn't quite capture. There's a lot of adapted compilation soundtrack scores, which is so important to films. We think about some of the, a movie like Pulp Fiction, for example. I know that's really old now, but the music is so central to that. And one of the things that it did, amongst the many things that a movie like Pulp Fiction did to change movie making, was what it did with its soundtrack. And it's there's nowhere to reward that music, but yet you can find a way to reward a song that nobody's going to remember that ran over an end credits. They need to fix the music categories.
They do. But they sort of, they cut sound down to one thing, because that used to be, because no one knew the difference between sound mixing and sound editing. But they are, I think, I do think particularly ceremony-wise, the Oscars do a little bit of streamlining next year around. And that doesn't mean not showing all the awards. It just means getting the hell on with it in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that people keep talking about is the international feature category, because the rules are just so ridiculous that national committees have to make submissions, and you just get in. The fear is if you don't do that, you'll end up with 2 French films and 3 Italian films every year. I'm not sure that's true anymore because of the way global cinema and distribution works. I think that probably would have been true if it wasn't based on national submissions in the 90s and the 80s. Go back in time, I think you would have ended up with just France, Italy, Germany would just lock the category out. But I don't think that's what would happen these days, because there's just too much diversity and there's too many festivals and there's too many smaller distribution companies, which is a good thing.
But that's what stopped Bong Joon-ho from also equaling the record, right? Because
they don't
feature was given to South Korea rather than...
Yeah, it goes to the film board and it's sort of put in a museum or something or on display. The director doesn't... director doesn't get the statue, so he won 3.
It's a bit weird. So the UK won an Oscar last year.
The UK. Jonathan Glazer is not an Oscar winner,
which is
wrong. Neither is Edward Berger. It said on Conclave from Oscar-winning director Edward Berger, and I think I said it when the trailer was released. He's not an Oscar winner. Outrageous. Who fact checks these trailers? This is unbelievable. And then I was shushed. It's like it hasn't started yet. Yeah. Anyway.
Just before we end,
yes.
Is there anything you're looking forward to this year, film-wise?
I'm going to be so basic and predictable. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, so I am very much looking forward to One Battle After Another, and that he said it for years, ever since 97 and Boogie Nights, and that could have been DiCaprio, and it ended up, he's like, we'll work together eventually, and it's finally going to happen. I thought the trailer was tremendous that dropped last week. I'm excited for it. Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, how can it not work?
It's a bit of a classic cast, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think that's the one I'm most looking forward to. But there are other ones too. We mentioned the Berger one. I'm curious to see what he does next. And there's Timothy Chalamet's in another. I don't know if he's playing a real life person or not, but it's about. I can't remember the name of it. It's about ping pong player, competitive ping pong player. I'm always interested to see what Timothy Chalamet does next, even though I didn't like A Complete Unknown. What about you? What's on the radar?
Well, 28 years later, I absolutely love 28 Days Later. I think that's sort of the pinnacle of Danny Boyle, that era. I haven't yet seen Mickey 17, but I love Bong Joon-ho, so it would be worth doing. Okay, I've heard that it was Mission Impossible 9. I know that. I just find it funny that they keep calling it Mission Impossible. It's the 9th one, but they're such underrated films. Not a lot of people saw 8 because of the circumstances, and when it came out last year, everyone was waiting for Oppenheimer, and he wanted an IMAX release, so barely anyone went to go and see it. But they're great films, so I love that. But what I'm actually kind of really looking forward to is Sinners, which I think the new Ryan Coogler film, which comes out I think in 2 weeks' time. But it looks like a real bit of me.
Is that Michael B. Jordan? The trailer's The trailer is. Yeah, the trailer made me want to see that. Yeah, there's a couple that just because I couldn't remember the name. The Berger one is Ballad of a Small Player. That's the one with Colin Farrell, where he's playing some sort of high stakes gambler, I think, who's in Macau, maybe trying to get away from something or lie low or something. And so it's Tilda Swinton and Colin Farrell, directed by Edward Berger. Kind of feel like I'm in on that with sort of sight unseen. I'd be in on that. I'm a huge Springsteen fan, so even though I don't generally like musical biopics, I'll be there on opening night to see what Jeremy Allen White does with that. Sure. And the Chalamet one that I couldn't remember the name of, Marty Supreme, and it's directed by Josh Safdie. So one of the Safdie brothers working by themselves for the first time, I think. So that'll be interesting. And the last one, just to say, I didn't mention it yet, Spike Lee, who I blow hot and cold with recently, but he is remaking a Akira Kurosawa film, a crime film from the 60s called... The Kurosawa film was called High and Low. The remake, or the reimagining, it's not a straight remake this year, it's called Highest to Lowest. And it's Denzel Washington, Jeffrey Wright, Spike Lee in the director's chair. The original is a great Kurosawa, one of those great non-samurai Kurosawas. Sure. And so I'm excited about that. But I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting. But.
Excellent. No, well, I'm also of the opinion that my favourite will probably be something that I haven't actually heard of yet.
Almost always is, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's been very comprehensive. We've gone through like a lot more than I thought we were going to as well.
Yeah, for anyone who's still listening.
Yeah, just at this point in.
You'll be getting immediate messages, don't have this guy back. What?
Thank you very much for sitting down with me and doing this, because
it was not a chore.
I haven't managed to get any of my friends to be interested enough in the Oscars yet, so that we can sit down and do a debrief afterwards. And when I was doing it, I distinctly remember Dan giving me an incredibly detailed list last time out of everything that should have won at the Oscars. And I was like, I'm sure he's going to want to talk about this. So I'm glad we've been able to do this, because I've always done Oscars predictions, but I've never done an Oscars review thing before. So this was a good way to start it. Thank you very much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, pleasure. We'll do it again sometime.
We will.
I hope. That's up to you, but I'm down.
We absolutely will. Well, I mean, I've got the existentialism of adult life to think about now, so I'll battle with that in some way. But I'm going to keep doing this because it's easy, and it means that people don't have to listen to me do it at parties. They can choose if they want to hear me talk about films or not, and I can actually keep my mouth shut at social occasions, which is still very, very difficult. But here we are. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Catch you again. So there we have it, about as comprehensive as you can get. That is award season done and dusted for another year, and now we can move back to waffling about all other things film. A huge thank you to Dan for taking the time out of his busy schedule to sit with me for nearly the full 3 hours to do the podcast. It was great to have him on. It's always nice to hear from a proper cineast with real knowledge, and as you can tell, his is pretty good, so it was an excellent time having him teach me at university as well. Next episode we'll see a return to something more specific in terms of topic, but whatever it ends up being, I have no doubt it'll be great fun, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you very much for pushing yourself all the way to the end of this extra long discussion, and I will see you at the next one. Don't go changing, and see you then. Bye!